Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Boardmasters. And today I want to celebrate with a bit of good news because Return to Dark Tower, they have booked a boat. By God, they have finally booked a boat for all of us backers in the UK, in the EU, and Australia. It's been a long, interminable process that hasn't been particularly pleasant for anyone involved because it has got quite toxic at times. But I definitely wanted to celebrate the fact that it is coming and it is going to be underway in the next few days because, well, if you follow the channel, you will know Return to Dark Tower is the campaign that introduced me to what modern board gaming actually is. Prior to that, this time 2 years ago, I only owned Marvel Legendary, Lord of the Rings card game, and XCOM the board game. All games I love, but all games that were bought off the IP that didn't give me any initiative or desire to go out and research what else was out there until this campaign hit. And because it's such good news, I thought I'd share it, I'd celebrate, and also today is the 1 year anniversary of the channel, so it is a day for celebrating good news. But I alluded to it earlier that there had been some toxicity and some frustration and everything throughout this campaign, and I just wanted to sort of give an outline of why that is, particularly as a UK backer, because there has been this sort of strange narrative that's come out from primarily US backers who obviously haven't had the issues that all the other regions have had, where everyone should just be grateful the game will get here eventually and just wait until you wait. And whilst there's an element of truth to that, it's a bit strange to attack people for being upset when they are constantly having the expectations that Restoration Games gave. They gave the expectations and then they failed to meet them repeatedly. And I just want to illustrate what I mean with that. So going back through the updates, we're at September 24th. So the World of Logistics, they've managed to book the first 9,000 base games on a boat, head into the US October 9th. So fulfillment basically started there. Again, at this point, I don't think anyone was unhappy. People weren't particularly unhappy that production was delayed. Everyone understood that. Everyone understood fulfillment was going to be a problem. And, at this point, it wasn't an issue. They were looking to book passage to other hubs. And, well, as they say, it's not a situation where we're doing all the US first and all other hubs later. Obviously, it turned into that because of fulfillment. Again, because of the size of the project and the scale, I don't think anyone really had that sort of an issue, but I'm recording this on the 25th of January, and as you can see, fulfillment in terms of the first boat hitting the water was October the 9th. Go forward to the update on October the 14th, and you can see obviously the US boat was well underway at that point, as well as waves 4 and 5 assigned to boats, although they didn't have containers. And then we had the first update for Europe and Australia, and obviously the back accounts for those were lower, so they said that they were going to delay the bookings because they wanted to send them out at the same time as the other SKUs, so all the expansions and all the extras and things, they wanted them all to go out at the same time. So they were delaying it, and they directed their logistics partners to start hunting for bookings for those back then, tentatively with the expectation that they will start heading to their respective hubs in early November. On to the next one, and this is early November, November the 9th. And again, I think the ship on the way to the US had a couple of weeks delay, but obviously was at least still on the way. And at this point, 21,000 base games have been manufactured, and all of the non-base game materials have been manufactured as well. So everything was basically ready by November 9th, pretty much, and just sitting in a warehouse. And then we go down, and I think this is where they started to have the issue, where they brought in this Return to Dark Tower sea freight status sheet, which is the sheet I mentioned earlier, because when they introduced this, they basically said this was the place to go if you wanted shipping info. If you wanted the most up-to-date info, it would be on here. And I think that led to people focusing on this as opposed to the updates. And there was issues with how they implemented this, which I'll get to in a moment. And again, after tentatively trying to book passage for UK EU in October the 14th, we are now on November the 9th, and they're now actively trying to book ships to the UK and the EU, which is a little bit frustrating when it's been 4 weeks and they've just gone from tentatively trying to book to actively trying to book. And then fast forward another 4 weeks, December the 6th, they had basically this is where the non-US Canada waves did get pushed to the back of the line. And the reason they gave for this, and again, feasible reasoning, is that they were finding it easier to book full containers, which the US waves were, and struggling to book less than full container loads, which the US, EU, Australia shipments would have been. I mean, it doesn't necessarily ring true as someone that I've had 5 Kickstarters fulfill since this update on December the 6th in the UK, all of which were less successful campaigns than Return to Dark Tower, all of which were much smaller boxes than Return to Dark Tower will be, and presumably they will have had a smaller footprint, and yet they managed to book less than full containers to the UK and the EU without any problems. Obviously, then it goes into the fact that they had an issue with their VAT registration, and this is 2 months after they tentatively started looking to book ships. So in that 2 months, we've gone from tentatively trying to book to actively trying to book to, well, we're saying we're trying to book, but it's a less than full container and we can't book them even though everyone else can. And we also messed up the VAT, so that's what's delayed it. And I think it was around this point where on this sheet, they changed the status of the base game waves for the EU, UK and Australia all to an estimated departure date of 31st of December, which obviously got everyone very, very excited because we were told that is the most up-to-date information. And yet in the update here, you can see that actually they haven't been able to book anything yet for the UK, EU, but we are confident those will depart before the end of the year. So we've now gone from confident it'll be on the water by November to confident it'll be on the water by the end of December. And you can kind of understand why people are being given these expectations by Restoration Games. They are then continually changing the goalposts, and that's led to a lot of frustration. On to January 5th, and at this point, that expected departure date on the spreadsheet had obviously proven to be false, and it took a number of days before Restoration Games were able to comment on that. And yeah, so the add-ons and everything got to the US. I believe the add-ons for the UK and the EU now were actually on a boat. So where they said earlier they were delaying the base game so that they would be shipped at the same time as the other SKUs, they then shipped the SKUs beforehand, and they were able to get a part full container for the SKUs, but not for the base games. So it was all very, very strange. And then we would just put, as it says, all hubs other than the EU were set to working. And with the expectation that they would be actively, again, I think they used the phrase somewhere in here, that they are actively booking everywhere except the EU, because the EU then they had a problem with their licenses. And again, just very, very frustrating. And then I think people got very, very angry at this point because obviously all the news and the official line was we're actively seeking bookings. And as you can see from this, they were actively seeking bookings back in November the 9th update for EU and the UK. So it was hard for anyone to put any stock in the fact that they were actively trying to book something that they'd actively been trying to book already for 2 months. There was no indication that that would happen anytime soon. And, you know, people then were starting to look at Chinese New Year next year, which would then delay it another number of weeks. And, you know, it was starting to feel a bit depressing. It started to feel like, okay, we've been told end of the year, end of February, And now we're probably looking at not being booked until after Chinese New Year, in which case we'll be lucky to get them by May. And people express themselves in a not great way. I think it's not a conspiracy on Restoration Games' fault. They're not sticking the middle finger up to all backers other than US backers and just some people allowed their frustration to boil over and got a bit angry, and they were wrong to do so. There was no reason to use offensive, derogatory language towards Restoration Games and criticize them and accuse them of conspiracies and stuff. It's fine to calmly explain that you're frustrated because of the reasons and the contradictions as well. There was a lot of mixed messages over that few months that quite understandably annoyed people. Oh, actually, this was the next update on January the 13th, where in bold, this means we are actively booking all hubs now because they managed to sort out the EU issue. And yeah, people were basically, you're actively booking all hubs now, but you were doing that on November the 9th, so it means nothing. Come back to us when you get a ship. And people, I think in general, there was a common thread. People wanted information on what alternatives Restoration Games had looked at, because we know Awaken Realms, with the UK shipment of the Great Wall, they put those on a lorry. I believe they air freighted the Nemesis Lockdown EU shipment. Townsfolk Tussle with Panic Roll, they obviously had a big fulfillment error where all of their stock got shipped to the US and then they had to freight it on to the UK and the EU. But it shows obviously they were able to get containers and ships to go from China to the US and then from the US to the UK and the EU in a quicker time than it's taken Return to Dark Tower to book a ship anywhere other than the US. So did they explore that? And yeah, I think it definitely got very frustrating. And then predominantly US based backers were like, stop being so ungrateful. It's a Kickstarter, you're not even guaranteed to get the game, you're not guaranteed any fulfillment, they haven't made any promises on your fulfillment, so just put up and shut up basically. And obviously that antagonized the people who were frustrated for waiting, so then they kicked back on that, which then had this sort of tennis match of aggression between different factions where both sides had a point but were expressing it really, really poorly. And yeah, antagonizing people for being frustrated that a game they've spent a huge amount of money on has not just been delayed because of COVID and fulfillment, but been delayed repeatedly in a short period of time, despite Restoration Games' constant assurances that it was going to happen in the next few days, it would be on the water by the end of the month, etc. And they kept setting these goals and failing to meet them. And as someone who works in customer service, is something people always stress. When you're dealing with customers, you under-promise and you over-deliver. And unfortunately, Restoration Games have got that balance completely reversed over the last 3 to 4 months of this campaign. Before that, phenomenal campaign, great communication, very transparent, very clear on the issues they were having with production. And you could see at the time, nobody had an issue. People understood. People recognized there's a pandemic. It's China have had issues with their energy, so they've had to shut down factories and everything. Again, all things Restoration Games communicated really well until it got to the fulfillment, and then it just kept going. It'll be the end of the month. We're actively booking. We're now actively booking again because we messed up the VAT. We're actively booking again and it just spiraled. But officially now, as we saw on the sheet, all the boats are now officially booked. They are leaving for the United Kingdom and the EU before Chinese New Year, which was a massive bonus for me, really. I really didn't expect to see that when it came out. And so, yeah, should largely complete by the end of March. And based on the other Kickstarters I've had fulfilling, 6 to 8 weeks is about right. So unless there's any bizarre delays out of the usual, then I can start looking forward to this game again, having pretty much had to write it off. And it was something I talked about in my top 10 of 2022, that Return to Dark Tower, when I put it together, was in the top 3 and ended up at 0.8, because I was super, super excited when it was going to be on the water by November. Then I was super excited it was going to be booked by the new year. And then it just gave that feeling that it's never going to be booked, and it might be May, it might be June, it might even be the end of 2022, because there doesn't seem to be any way they're getting these ships booked. And my excitement really, really cooled on this. But now I'm super hyped again. If I was redoing my top 10, this would probably be back certainly in the top 5, maybe even in the top 3. And I guess on the other side of the coin, Bard Sung, that jumped up to number 4 because they announced they should be on boats by January 31st. Haven't said anything since, so it's going to be interesting to see if they have to do a sort of rewind and say, although we expected them to be on the boats before Chinese New Year, they haven't been able to, so it won't be an end of March thing that we hoped. It will be fulfillment of May, which was their estimated delivery, and still an incredible accomplishment in the current climate, but certainly something that's going to open them up to a lot of grief, because they've set the expectation of the ships being on the water by January 31st. And if they don't hit that, there will inevitably be some pushback, rightly or wrongly. But I know there's probably a bit of a negative vibe to the video, because I wanted to go back and just explain to people why there was an issue around this campaign over the last 3 to 4 months, and why people in my situation were feeling frustrated and let down by Restoration Games, and understandably so in my position. But we can all officially put that behind us, celebrate the boats being booked. We have the names, we have the tracking, we have the departure date. Return to Dark Tower should be delivered to anyone and everyone by the end of March. And for me, that is definitely a reason to celebrate, along with the fact that this is the 1-year anniversary of the channel. So I am a very, very happy boy today. So that's it for the video, really. Thank you very much for watching. Look after yourself, stay safe, and have a good one. Bye-bye now.